So good morning. I had a loss for words for there for a second. If you remember, last time we read in Genesis 35 and 36. 35 being uh, the what happened after Jacob's sons ransacked Shechem, and they we don't know that they were fleeing, but it seems like they were to Bethel to um, approach God and to offer sacrifice and to get get things right, which may or may not have been influenced by fear, by Jacob fearing for his life, but nonetheless. So Jacob comes back, and then we hear the genealogy of Esau, and also that Isaac dies, and Isaac dies at 180 years old. So that's where we left at. Jacob evidently comes back, and we'll see that, back to Shechem, where he left from, and that's where we pick up. So, chapter 37, verse 1. And Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flocks with his brethren. So, some more math and some time for you. Joseph was 6 years old when Jacob left Laban to return to his land. So, if Jacob's 17, then everything that transpired with the sacking of Shechem at Dinah, and with Jacob taking all of his family and his camp to Bethel to offer sacrifice, happened in the space of 11 years. So not a lot of time has passed, to be honest. So Joseph is still fairly young. Now he's a teenager, and we know how teenagers can be arrogant. We know how they can be rash, which is interesting because at this point, if Jacob is 17 years old, then Jacob's oldest brother would be about 24. That would be Reuben. Simeon and Levi, who were the second and third son of Leah, let's just guesstimate a year apart. So Simeon and Levi would have been 23 and 22, thereabouts. So if Shechem had already been sacked, okay? If Shechem had already been decimated, then that means that Simeon and Levi very well could have been in their teens when they did this. Late teens given you, 18, 19, could have been 20, 21, they might have been in the early 20s. So it's just interesting to keep that in context. It makes you wonder how young they were, because they couldn't have been any older than, we know that Jacob, Simeon and Levi, when Jacob returns to his land, they would have been probably 12, 13. So somewhere between 12, 13 years old to 22, 23 years old, all of that happened. They conquered Shechem. So just something just one of those thoughts, one of those things. Keep in mind. So let's continue. So we know that Jacob is 17 years old. Verse 2. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flocks with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. So apparently the sons of Zilpah and sons of Bilhah, not surprisingly, because we know how mischievous Jacob's sons can be. We don't know what they were doing, but whatever they were doing, they were up to no good. That's why Jacob brings back their evil report. It's not necessarily that the sons of Zilpah and Bilhah were actually engaged in evil acts, but that whatever news Joseph was bringing back to Jacob was not good. It was a bad report. They had been doing something. Verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all the children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. We got to also remember that at this point Rachel is dead. Rachel has died. So it's sad to think Rachel was Jacob's favorite, and Jacob only had 24 years at most. We don't know how soon this takes place after Rachel's death, but if Jacob's 17, that means that or Joseph's 17, that means that Jacob only had 20 plus years with his favorite wife, with Rachel. They didn't have a long-lasting marriage. They didn't have a long, happy marriage like Abraham and Sarah did, and Isaac and Rebekah. She died, it sounds like, fairly young. And which is not uncommon when women die from childbirth. So, just something to remember. And that might have been after Rachel died and Jacob continued to, despise might be a hard word, not love Leah like he loved Rachel. That he mourned Rachel and still didn't give Leah the same love. That might have been one, just context, or one of the reasons why Reuben, Leah's oldest son, had why his actions with Bilhah might have been out of spite, because Reuben was the oldest. He got to see all the heartache that Leah had to endure with Jacob not loving her, and I don't know, something to think about. So verse 4, chapter 37, verse 4. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all of his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Now we know that, I'll mention it here in a minute. Verse 5, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams, for his words. So Joseph, he's become Jacob's watchman. He's become the eyes and ears for Jacob, for their father. And so anytime the other sons are misbehaving, Joseph, it sounds like, goes and lets Jacob know. And so you can understand why his brothers despised Joseph so much, because he was a tattletale. They couldn't. The brothers couldn't get away with anything because Joseph was always watching, was always around, and then Joseph loved Jacob loved Joseph more than all of them. It was obvious that he favored them, and so Joseph wasn't the youngest. Benjamin was the youngest, but he was the younger of all the brothers. So here's Joseph being placed over them as a watchman, and then Joseph starts having dreams that he's going to rule over his brothers, or they're going to bow down to him. Now it's interesting that this particular dream, two things. Joseph is gifted with dreams, so he's having dreams, but he's also later on we learn that he has the ability to interpret dreams. Joseph, the dream he has about the sheaves quite literally comes true, very literally comes true. And we'll see that because Joseph ends up going into Egypt and being over all the grain stores during the years of plenty. And they end up storing great stores of great quantities of grain. Now, what are sheaves? Sheaves could be wheat, could be spelt, could be sheaves of grain is what they say. It doesn't matter what type exactly, but that's exactly what Joseph does in Egypt to save his family. Verse 9. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Now you can understand, Joseph has one dream about sheaves of wheat. It's something they do all the time. I mean, that's just a part of life, is gathering grain and wrapping them into sheaves. And his brothers would probably thought, that's a little arrogant of him to have that dream, and despised him for it. But now, Joseph is claiming the heavens. He's saying, I have dreamed a dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Now, the arrogance, at least in his brother's eyes, it couldn't get any worse. Here's Jacob comparing himself to be more than the sun, the moon, and the stars. Well, who else is greater than the sun, the moon, and the stars? God himself. So they could have easily assumed that Joseph was comparing himself to God. And let's verse 10, and he told his father and his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? So even Jacob is upset with Joseph for this dream. Now, does Jacob think that Joseph is making these things up? Don't know. But that's a pretty, even from Jacob's standpoint, this dream that Joseph has about the sun, moon, and stars is pretty arrogant. And even Jacob probably takes it as a Joseph being an equal to God. So yeah, it could have been very serious and very alarming. Verse 11, and his brethren envied him, but his father observed the same. So obviously his father chastised him for it, but his father has had God spoke to him in dreams. And so he's pondering and contemplating, okay, what if this is truly a dream from God, what does it mean? Now, had the other of Joseph's brothers ever had dreams from God like Jacob and Joseph had? We don't know. It seems maybe not. But we'll call it a gift that Jacob has for dreaming. Obviously Joseph has also. So verse 12. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, Here am I. And he said to him, Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with thy flocks, and bring me word. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and came to Shechem. Right here, we see that Joseph is being sent out by his father to watch his brothers, I don't want to say spy, but to bring report. He is the eyes and the ears of Jacob. And his brothers are supposed to be in Shechem. Verse 15, And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, What seek thou? So this field must have been outside of Shechem. So Joseph is out where his brothers should be, looking for them, and they're not there. And so he comes across this guy, and he says, Hey, the guy says, You look lost. Can I help you? And he says, Yeah, I'm looking for my brothers and their flocks. Which should have been fairly easy to find, if not here, when you get close to them. Verse 16, And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed hence. For I heard them say, Let's go unto Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. So, obviously, the brothers are not where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be in Shechem. They decided, for whatever reason, to go to Dothan. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some entertaining activity in the land of Dothan. So Joseph sets out to go find out why they're there and what they're there for. So we can assume, now again, it's not written, but it sounds like to me that his brothers shouldn't have been in Dothan. His father told them to go to Shechem, and that's where they should have been. 18. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him in the pit. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. It's interesting that Reuben, the oldest of his brothers, the one who may have cause to hate him most, because it could be argued that Reuben should have had the birthright. That Reuben should have been the child that the birthright was passed to. We know later that Reuben is removed from the tribes of Israel. There's not a tribe of Reuben because of what Reuben did with Bilhah, his stepmom, his father's wife. But it's interesting that Reuben is the one that sticks up for him. Verse 22, And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into the pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hands upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass that Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was with him. And they took him, and they cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. So it sounds like this was a dry well. This was at one time was a well, but now it's just a pit. Verse 25, And they sat down to eat, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spices and balm, myrrh, and going to carry it down to Egypt. "26. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren were content." So here's Judah. Judah says, what good is it if we just kill him? Let's at least make some money off him. Let's sell him to these merchants that are coming through, that are passing through, and at least make a profit off of what we're doing. That way, Joseph's blood won't be on our hands, and we'll get some money off of it. Now, was Judah doing it out of greed, or was he starting to have second thoughts about killing his brother? Don't know. But Judah's the one that came up with the idea of selling him. 28. Then there passed by Midianite merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. Now, I want to point something out. In verse 27, we read Ishmaelites. And then verse 28, we read Midianites. And then at the end of verse 28, we read Ishmaelites. Some people accuse, or they bring this up and say, see, the Bible doesn't know who they're talking about. This is a point of criticism in the Old Testament. Well, I think that's very ignorant to say that, because, let's think about this for a second. Who was Ishmael? Ishmael was the son of Abraham. Who was Midian, whom the Midianites are named after? Midian was Ishmael's half-brother through Abraham's wife Keturah. So, we're talking about cousins, second cousins, that far apart. These people, these Midianites or Ishmaelites that were passing by on their way to Egypt, could have been both. I mean, we know that families tend to stick together or intermarry. Who's to say that the Ishmaelites and the Midianites lived near each other and had common relationships? It's actually more probable than not that the children of Midian and the children of Ishmael intermarried. So it might be that Midianites were more that Ishmaelites were known to live in this area, okay, and that Midianites were known to be merchants that traveled from city to city selling. And it may be that there was Ishmaelites that lived the lifestyle of the Midianites. The Ishmaelites that rather than staying put in that land were traveling with Midianites. We don't know, but it's silly to criticize the Bible because it says Midianites, Ishmaelites, Midianites. That's it's the same family. It's very close relations. There's no reason why they couldn't have been traveling together. So it may have been a band of Midianites, and an Ishmaelite within the Midianites bought Joseph. We don't know, but it's silly to say that this is a flaw in the Bible, because it could have been both. I mean, it's silly. There was enough close relations, and they were close enough related that it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. Verse 28, and they passed by Midianite merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. Verse 29, and Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. So where did Reuben go? All the brothers are sitting there eating lunch, and they conspire, namely Judah, hey, let's uh, let's go sell Joseph to these Ishmaelites or these Midianites that are coming through. And then Reuben returns from somewhere, and Joseph is missing. Don't know. But obviously Reuben took off and went somewhere for a little while. Verse 30. And he returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not, and whither shall I go? Now Reuben was upset enough that he rent his clothes. This obviously made him very distraught. This wasn't just a contention or just, oh crap, where'd he go? He was very upset. Verse 31. And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood. So at this point, I think Reuben wanted to spare Joseph's life and return him back to his father. But at this point, if Joseph had already been sold to the Ishmaelites, what could be done? So when Reuben came back, it must have been quite a bit later, quite a while after he'd been sold. So at this point, Reuben has no choice but to go along with it. I don't know. 32, and they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, this have we found now. Now whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it and said, it's my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted. And he said, for I will go down into my grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. If you know, you might hear that often, sackcloth and ashes. It was tradition when you were either in mourning or fasting that you would remove any form of wealth, any form of significance out of your body. You would dress just in enough to cover your nakedness, and you would sit in a pile of ashes. You would cover yourself with ashes because you were less than the dust of the earth. You were less than the ashes of the earth. How long did this go on with Jacob? We know it just says he mourned a long time for Joseph. And yet, for this whole time, the 11 sons kept their peace and didn't say anything to Jacob. This we're going to end it there, but to talk about family drama, I mean, how much worse can it be? You watch this in mafia movies where, you know, you have a family of brothers, and at one point one of the brothers is off because he's conspiring to do something, he's trying to take over, or he's trying to rat them out, or, you know. So this could be like a mafia movie where all these 11 brothers, they conspire to whack one of their youngest brother because he keeps tattletaling on them to their father, the Godfather, the Don. But so I mean, it's sad. It's very sad, but it's also it makes me laugh because it's extreme. It's extremely extreme, and it's sad, but this is the story of the sons of Jacob. The sons of Jacob, the tribe of Israel, the tribes of Israel, who we give so much reverence. Their forefathers, the 12 sons of Jacob, they weren't these holy, wonderful men that Abraham and Isaac and Jacob were. They were a handful, and they were a mess. we're going to read in the next chapter Judah, how much of a mess Judah is, and it just gives us a window into this family's a wreck. Anyways, but it becomes a wonderful. I mean, it's a wonderful story in the end. With that said, have a wonderful day. Read your Bible. There is so much. It's a wonderful book of morals. It's a wonderful book of family. Shows that family is not perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect family. Every family is dysfunctional. Every family has its skeletons. Every family has its drama. That's just the nature of it. Anyways, have a wonderful morning. God bless.